as New Delhi wraps its last-minute preparations for the crucial summit and it hopes to capitalize on the G20 presidency. It's interesting that we've just got a sort of a window of how the world actually views India and what it thinks of India. I'm talking, of course, about the Pew survey that has just come out. It offers some interesting numbers and interesting reflection, not just on what the world thinks of India, but also what the world thinks of each other. The Pew Research Center surveyed a total of 30,861 people in at least 24 countries. It found, interestingly, that people in most G20 nations have a favorable view on India. They see India positively, with a median of 46% of adults holding a favorable opinion of India. A median of 34%, on the other hand, have a negative opinion on India. Now let's just see which of the surveyed countries have the best and the worst opinions of India. And interestingly, the numbers out here may be considered surprising by some of you. On top, the country which has the highest opinion of India, perhaps isn't a surprise. Israel. 71% of Israelis say that they see India favorably. And given the relation between India and Israel, that's not surprising. Then you have Kenya and Nigeria, and then the United Kingdom. In all of these countries, at least 60% of people have a positive view of India. 6 in 10, that's a good number, a number that brand India should be proud of. In North America, other countries in the West, Canada, US, for example, good numbers. They see India very favorably. Mexico also. The people who see India favorably in these countries outweigh those who don't, as is the case with 10 other European nations like France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Italy, Netherlands, Poland, Spain, Sweden. By and large, positive views on India. Not as much as in some of the other countries I mentioned earlier, but positive-ish views in India. But here's what's interesting. The survey finds that political ideology often plays a role in how India is viewed. In Hungary, Australia, and Israel, for example, those on the political right have a more favorable view of India than those on the left. In the United States, though, it's the opposite. The liberals are more likely than the conservatives to hold India in a favorable light. What factors possibly influence a person's view of another country? Is it soft power, military power, the leader at the helm of the country? All of those things come up. But actually, the other thing that India should think about a little bit was some of the countries that actually had an unfavorable opinion of India, where the people who viewed India negatively were more than the people who viewed India positively. And there were some surprises out there. South Africa. Well, traditionally, South Africa and India have had close relations. Is it domestic politics? Is it the Indian community there which had a factor to play in that? I'm not so sure. Latin America, countries like Argentina and Brazil, negative views on India. Surprisingly, some countries in the global south not having a positive view in India needs to be thought through. The other thing which China should be thinking through, by the way, and it brings me back to where I started, that cartographic aggression, is the fact that China's views continue to slide. China's ratings in the world continue to slide, the number of people seeing it negatively. And for more on that, we're now being joined by Raymond Vickery, Senior Associate and Chair in the US-India Policy Studies, former US Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Trade, and he's Senior Associate at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Raymond, thank you so much for joining us. Before I come to you, specifically about what the Pew report is saying about India or the US, perhaps I'm not entirely surprised that the perception of China continues to slide, given what can only be described as really provocative actions that I was talking about a little earlier on this program, cartographical aggression, saying that all of the South China Sea, half of Asia, large parts of India all belong to China. Is that adding to the continuing negative impressions about China that are building up around the world?
Yeah, I think that what China is doing at the Xi level, the leadership level, is counterproductive. This business of putting out a map saying that an entire state of India is in fact the property of China is just unacceptable, and it's very bad timing. We're trying, I think the world is trying through the G20 and other mechanisms to pull people together. And for China to put out this map, along with what it's already done in the 9-dot map about the South China Sea, is very counterproductive.
When it comes to perceptions around the world, I'm going to come back to that Pew report. I'm sure you've seen that Pew study. Some of us in India, of course, there's high favorability ratings for India, for example, coming from countries like Israel or the UK or other such countries, Kenya, for example. But interestingly, not so much from some members of the global South, like South Africa or Brazil or Argentina. Does that surprise you a little bit?
India, Brazil, South Africa, I think, has its own history in terms of a memory about a time when there were conflicts within South Africa between those of Indian origin and those who were African in origin. That's the only way I can explain that. It is puzzling, isn't it? Particularly in view of the efforts which Prime Minister Modi and the MEA have made to reach out to the global South and to show how much that there is in common between the global South and India. But I don't think it ought to be a showstopper by any means. I think it's more reflective of a lack of understanding of India, of what has happened in India in terms of economic progress, the role in the world of India as a major power, rather than something that is to be interpreted as hostility.
Raymond, thank you so much for joining us with that perspective.